it known.
Present on!
When the British Empire faded after World War II, Britain was reduced to a regional power. It withdrew from its key colonial holdings including India and Pakistan in 1947, Palestine and Burma-Myanmar in 1948, Sudan in 1956, and most of its African colonies such as Nigeria and Kenya in the 1960s. By 1997, Britain had also relinquished control of Hong Kong. The collapse of the British Empire was the end of an era, but history is now repeating itself. The United States, which took over as the world's leading power, is facing the same fate. A new reality is hitting the neoconservatives, a political movement that began in America in the late 20th century. This movement has been led by powerful institutions like the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and the Project for the New American Century. These organizations promote interventionist foreign policy, advocate for a strong military presence, and push for regime change under the guise of democracy. Neoconservatives gained power in the 1970s and exerted strong influence during the George W. Bush administration, leading the push for wars in the Middle East and adopting aggressive stances on global affairs. The United States has never been powerful enough to rule the entire globe by itself. Instead, it has relied on alliances, economic coercion, and military dominance to maintain control. NATO, for example, is not just a military alliance. It is a tool used by the US to hold down the global South and even its own allies such as Germany, Japan, and South Korea. These countries are discouraged from developing independent nuclear capabilities, restricted in their military advancements, and forced into military dependence on the United States. The North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, is a clear example of how the US has structured economic systems to benefit itself and its closest allies. While Canada benefited from NAFTA by maintaining high wages and economic diversity, Mexico remained trapped in economic dependence on US corporations. Its manufacturing sector grew, but low wages and struggling farmers ensured that Mexico never advanced beyond being a low-cost labor hub. This is how the US has maintained its influence, not through fair competition, but by rigging the system in its favor. It is time to accept that the United States is no longer the powerful nation it was in the 1990s. Just like the British Empire, it is now in decline. The US built its power not on genuine strength, but on propaganda and Hollywood narratives. No country in history has invested more time and effort into crafting an image of an invincible superpower. In reality, the US rose to global dominance not because of its own strength, but because all its major rivals, Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, Imperial Japan, and even Britain, collapsed after years of devastating wars. The Soviet Union was also not a real economic challenge to the US. By the 1990s, the Soviet economy was already weak with a GDP less than half that of the United States. Overburdened by military overspending and failing in consumer industries, the USSR collapsed, bringing an end to the Cold War. With all its rivals gone, the US was free to impose its will on the world. This allowed Washington to pressure nations into joining the American-led financial and political order with little resistance. Unlike Europe, the Pacific, and North Africa, which were devastated by war, the US mainland was never touched. After securing global oil trade in US dollars during the 1970s, the American economy boomed. This gave the US immense unearned global influence, allowing it to print unlimited amounts of money, impose unilateral sanctions, and weaponize the financial system against enemy countries, all while producing nothing of real value for the world. The United States never truly earned its global power. It simply ensured that no rival could challenge its dominance. However, the emergence of China as a regional power has changed everything. As soon as China began to rise, the US lost its status as the world's unquestioned hegemon. The global community never approved of US domination, and the rapid de-dollarization movement, along with the global South's eagerness to join BRICS, proves that many countries are rejecting American control. Neoconservatism, the ideology that has driven U.S. foreign policy for decades, is now collapsing. Neocons believe that the U.S. must maintain global hegemony through military superiority, economic control, and ideological influence. Their doctrine of perpetual interventionism has crumbled after U.S. failures in Afghanistan and Ukraine. In 2023, Chinese President Xi Jinping urged the nation to prepare for worst-case scenarios, accelerating nuclear bunker construction in Chongqing and Beijing.
China is preparing for war. It is building an entire city for this purpose. About 30 kilometers southwest of Beijing, a new military complex is coming up. The scale is dramatic. It's a massive facility, some 1,500 acres in size, that is 10 times bigger than the Pentagon. Going by some claims, the Pentagon is larger than 100 American football fields. And Beijing's military city will be 10 times bigger than that.
The lack of truly long-term survival bunkers does play a role in nuclear deterrence. If Western powers knew they could completely survive a global nuclear war, they might be more reckless with nuclear weapons. No nation has a 1,000-year bunker, making total war mutually assured destruction. The West is now being forced into economic rather than military confrontation. The era of U.S. global dominance is coming to an end. Just as the British Empire faded into irrelevance, the United States is now in retreat. Russia continues its special operation with the aim of demilitarizing NATO in Ukraine, while China rises in global influence. America weakened its own economy by prioritizing Wall Street over manufacturing, neglecting its industrial base. Drunk on American exceptionalism, it overestimated its dominance, ignoring the rise of Russia and China. The global south is now shifting towards a multipolar world where Russia does the heavy lifting, just as it did in World War II, losing 27 million Soviet to crush the Nazis. If current trends continue, U.S. national debt will likely surpass $40 trillion in the coming years, making its military-industrial complex unsustainable. Washington's ability to maintain financial hegemony is finally collapsing.
The U.S. wants a review of its role in the IMF and the World Bank. This is in line with what is written in Project 2025, which is a right-wing playbook to reshape the U.S. federal government.
America is increasingly disengaging from the UN, the International Monetary Fund, and cutting funds to the global south because it is broke and heading towards collapse. With rising debt and domestic economic struggles, President Trump has adopted America First nationalism, prioritizing self-interest over global commitments. Trump claimed that multilateral institutions have empowered China, and the U.S. seeks to reassert unilateral control and weaken global organizations that challenge its dominance. Cutting funds to the global south is an effort to redirect resources towards its own collapsing system. Financial aid to developing nations is seen as less beneficial for U.S. interests, leaving America to focus on bilateral deals and regional alliances instead. President Trump is terminating thousands of government contracts, leading to what experts predict could be the largest job cuts in U.S. history. Meanwhile, national literacy rates are at an all-time low, and education funding is being slashed as part of widespread budget cuts. The truth is, America is drowning in unprecedented debt, and the world is no longer willing to finance its deficits. The Trump phenomenon is pure desperation politics, as the U.S., having lost the Ukraine war, now turns against its own allies in a desperate bid for survival.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran.
It's one of those things where you look at a map, and there's Europe and Russia, and there's the United States, and look what's in between them, the world's biggest island, Greenland. And Trump wants to do this for a number of reasons, mostly trade and military. This is the GI-UK gap, Greenland, Iceland, UK, and the sea routes coming down. And that's where the Russian submarines come, and they go under the ice, and the Russian ships come. And the Americans want a lot more access to be able to monitor all that. They also want access to the many, many minerals that are present, rare earth materials, iron, all sorts of minerals, and many of them that are required for military technology, which at the moment China has the majority of access.
Since the 1990s, The US has been on a steady decline, losing every war it waged in West Asia. From the Gulf War to the disastrous invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, Washington's military escapades left behind failed states' endless suffering and regional chaos. The US was also strategically defeated in Somalia during the Battle of Mogadishu due to underestimating Somali militia forces, poor intelligence, and logistical failures. Despite superior firepower, the mission's objectives were not fully achieved, resulting in heavy American casualties and a public backlash that led to a forced withdrawal. Protected by American immunity, Israel continues to commit crimes against humanity, further intensifying anti-Western sentiment. Meanwhile, America bombs Yemen's Houthis, whose only crime is blocking ships in protest of Israel's siege in West Asia.
This was an overwhelming response that actually targeted multiple Houthi leaders and took them out. And the difference here is, one, going after the Houthi leadership, and two, holding Iran responsible.
Trump campaigned as the ultimate peace president, vowing to end America's endless wars. Yet he now wages war on Yemen's Houthis and flirts with conflict against Iran. The US cannot survive without war. Endless conflict fuels its military-industrial complex and props up its failing economy. But history is clear. No empire bombs its way back to dominance. The more it escalates, the faster its fall will be. The dying empire cannot stop its collapse. It can only make it bloodier. The US has portrayed itself as the defender of human rights and international law. That illusion is now impossible to maintain as Israel continues its relentless bombardment of West Asia, unaliving mostly women and children. America remains Israel's shield at the United Nations, vetoing ceasefires and blocking humanitarian aid. The double standard is staggering. Washington preaches democracy while arming apartheid. It sanctions Russia for its actions in Ukraine, but rewards Israel with more military equipment. It lectures China on human rights while funding the unthinkable. The entire world is watching this hypocrisy unfold in real time. The United States has lost its credibility. The international community is no longer afraid to speak out. Countries across Latin America, Africa, and Asia are cutting diplomatic ties with Israel. Trump's tariff war is just a cover-up for America's deeper problems, rising debt and fading global power. While the US tried to act tough on trade, BRICS nations grew stronger, outpacing the G7 and pushing to ditch the dollar. Despite its military aggression, America is losing its grip on the world. Nations once under its control are breaking free. The global south is aligning with China and Russia, shifting trade away from Western-dominated institutions. Even traditional US allies are questioning Washington's leadership.
I don't really like this idea, like being part of United States, America.
Inuit people have lived on the island for thousands of years. They survived by subsistence hunting of whales and seals. Their culture was based in the middle of nature. Over the next 200 years, Christianity and the Danish language were pushed on the Inuit. Their families were torn apart. And that trauma left a legacy.
Of course, in the future, I will prefer independent Greenland.
We are own people. We are not Danish. We are Greenlandic people, and we want to be free.
Do you want Greenland to be bought?
No, not at all. No.
Why not?
Because it's our land, and we have our culture, language, and we're starting to get our own way of life.
The more the US doubles down on war, the faster its decline will accelerate. No empire has ever bombed its way back to greatness. The Romans, the Ottomans, the British, all tried to cling to power through force, and all collapsed under the weight of their own contradictions. The US is no different. As the world rejects US hegemony, the real question is not whether America will fall, but how much destruction it will cause in its final years. The reckless support for Israel, the illegal airstrikes in Yemen, and the desperate attempts to cling to economic control all point to one conclusion. The US empire is dying, and it will not go quietly.